Today we have with us a top BNP leader who has also been a cabinet minister, Mr. Moyeen Khan, and he will be talking to us about what lies ahead for Bangladesh and its political landscape. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Sir. Glad that you agreed to meet. So if you could tell us a little about what really happened when Sheikh Hasina left on 5th of August, what led to the fall, and what next? I mean, too many questions in one, but if you could just take our viewers back from what happened and what triggered it.
The problem in Bangladesh started when Bangladesh deviated from the path of democracy. You may remember, or you may have read, because you were not probably born at the time of the independence of Bangladesh. You're part of the young generation. And it is the young generation in Bangladesh which brought about the latest change. So Bangladesh was born for one cause, and that is democracy. So when they realized that there is no democracy in Bangladesh, they revolted. They revolted peacefully. This is amazing. It was the government which used violent means, not the students. And this is a unique thing that happened in Bangladesh. I strongly believe that what happened on the 5th of August in Bangladesh is not really just part of Bangladesh history, but it is, in fact, will find its place in world history. Unique. Sheikh Hasina was in the government for 15 years. She gave lip service to democracy. She was always talking about democracy. But in reality, she was just doing the opposite. She was behaving as a leader who is worse than Hitler. And this was discussed in public. If she had taken a note of the criticism that was being made of her, I believe she may not have ended in this way. This is very sad. And there's also another point. You see, when we talk about an autocrat and a dictator, we know how they behave, how they treat the common people, how they exploit the common people. And of course, in this particular case, the economic exploitation was added with the physical torture, intimidation, persecution. So they went parallelly. But the point here is different in Bangladesh. This, I believe, in some sense, a unique case where she was all the way preaching democracy, and under the mask of democracy, she was practicing autocracy. And may I say that we know an autocrat, how he or she behaves, and people know that this is bad. But when somebody becomes an autocrat under the cover of democracy, it becomes dangerous. And that's what she was. So eventually she had to go. It's the people's power. And as people say, we need to learn from history, but we don't. In a way, what she did to her was not enough. In addition, she destroyed her father as well, for the second time perhaps. And this is the reality of Bangladesh.
Yes, we did see horrific pictures of Mujibur Rahman's statue being pulled down and his house being burned.
Not one,
yes.
All over the country.
Yes, yes.
So you can understand the frustrations inside the minds of the people. They were fathoming. And the moment they got an opportunity for the outburst, it just washed away everything, like a flash flood. What's going on in Bangladesh right now? I will not go into that topic because that was an issue by itself. People are talking about the floodgates being opened in Tripura, and the water rushed in. But that is a different issue.
So, talking about the Bangladesh Nationalist Party, you're a top leader of the party. You've been a union minister as well. What was the party's role as an opposition party when the Awami League was in power? I was also told that in the previous 2-3 elections, the BNP withdrew from fighting the elections.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
yes.
Exactly, because they were not elections. They were mockery of elections. Now everybody would say, although during the past 15 years under the Awami regime, people were not even allowed to say that. So if somebody said that the Prime Minister and the Awami League, they were carrying out these fictitious elections, they were nabbed and put into the jail. You have heard about the Ayana Ghar, I'm sure, where people were detained for years without these people being allowed any contact whatsoever with the outside world. It's unbelievable, shocking, and inhuman. But that's the way she did. That's the way she went. And the people had responded to that.
What
The
about
way that she had to flee
right?
for fear of her life, as a matter of fact.
What about the role of BNP in this student movement?
Interestingly, while people may think that everything occurred within a month or so, the reality is different. The reality is different in the way that for the past 15 years, BNP and several other smaller opposition political parties, they continued to move, and they continued to I will not use the word revolt, but they continued to protest against the misdeeds of this government. And the government responded by trying to shutting down the lips of the opposition. They hold the freedom of speech. They obstructed the rights of association of people. They obstructed any activity by the opposition that the government considered was a threat to them, so that they may be removed from the government. So the sole purpose of the government was to continue to be in power and authority, and in the process, financial and economically exploit Bangladesh. You must be aware of some of the facts and figures. Let's put it this way. 15 years ago, our external debt was $5 billion US dollars. And now our external debt is 100 billion US dollars, 20 times that of what this Awami League government started with initially. So this is just one index, but I can give you dozens of other indices. The amount of money that had been funneled out of the country illegally and put into reserve in various offshore banking by the Awami League leaders. This is, in terms of US dollars, is at least 100 billion, another 100 billion US dollars, which is unbelievable. And also unfortunate, because that money belongs to the poor taxpayers of Bangladesh. All this continued to happen, and Hasina and her government and her party believe that they can continue to throttle the people of Bangladesh with the use of guns. And that guns eventually killed Awami League and Hasina and her father. It's amazing, as I say. When she decided to use guns against the students who were in an absolutely peaceful movement, the students just stood like that in front of the guns. They were not afraid. Because the students don't have any backtrack. They can't backtrack. They don't have any attraction backwards. They only look forwards.
So
It's very different from a normal human being who has a family, who has a job, who has a business. He behaves in front of the gun in one way. But the students behave in an entirely different way.
right. So the violence, in fact, occurred.
Just 1 minute,
Yes.
let me finish. So what happened in this case, as just to complete, while the government was using the guns with the lead bullets, the students retaliated with the peaceful gun of the internet. And eventually, the peaceful gun of the internet won against the bullets of the government.
So that's why, I mean, when we, again, back home, when I was in India, when I was looking at the horrific visuals coming out from Bangladesh, initially, like you mentioned, the protests were peaceful, but then it turned violent after, these killings of
It was
students
the government
started.
which turned this peaceful movement into a violent one. The police, the government has destroyed each and every institution in Bangladesh. You are lucky in India, I must say. In spite of all various criticism, India has been able to maintain their institutions now over almost a period of more than 75 years. Look at the last general elections of India. Your Prime Minister claimed that he will get more than 400 seats. But eventually he ended up with less than half of the total seats in the parliament. Interestingly, this is a proof that your process of democracy is working. It's not that he failed in his target to get 400 seats. Right. And this also proves that in India, as I say, you have been able to maintain your institutions, which functions. But while in Bangladesh, this was the problem. Hasina and her cohorts, they not only destroyed the lives and the properties of the people, but at the same time destroyed each and every institution in Bangladesh. Let me tell you, the civil service, they polluted and destroyed. The police service, they destroyed. And the judiciary, they captured. You see, judiciary is one pillar of our constitution. We have three, like in India, like in any democratic country: the executive, the parliament, and the judiciary.
And fourth being the media.
The judiciary was captured by the executive. So the justice, I'm sorry to say, the justices of the High Court, they did not write the judgments. The Department of Ministry of Law, they wrote the judgment, handed it over to the justices just to announce it.
Right.
So this was the state of affairs in Bangladesh. So they destroyed the judiciary. Then, on the other hand, they destroyed the election commission. So the free and fair election was not possible anymore in Bangladesh. And that is precisely the reason why BNP did not take part in many of these elections, in order to respond to your question. Because we realized that there's no point in taking part in the election. On the contrary, if we take part in the election, what we do is legitimize a fake election for Hasina and her party to spread around the world that we have won the election. So we did not want to become a party to that.
But sir, isn't the role of the opposition is also to ensure that their voice is heard? If this was happening, then, boycotting an election really way out?
No, boycotting a real election is anti-democratic, I must admit. But this was not election. This was a fake election. You must differentiate between the two. In the last one, in 2018, the ballots were stuffed during the night, not during the day. So you realize, as I said, the whole point was that we could not have legitimized this fake elections, by farcical elections. And these are the words. These are not my words. These are the words that had been used by the international media after each of these elections. So I already responded to your question. You see, the point here was to bring back and restore, as I say, restore this institute, the election commission, the anti-corruption election commission, the election commission, the anti-corruption commission, the Public Service Commission. There are two in Bangladesh, one for the top jobs and one for the bottom jobs. Both of them. And you name an institution, it is the National Board of Revenue, the Taxation Department. What did the Taxation Department do? They used to haul the innocent people and ask them to give taxes, while all the corrupt people who are cohorts of the government, they never collected taxes from them.
Right.
So
even the banking system, I was told,
banking system is totally
shambles.
destroyed. You already know about this from the newspapers, which had been reported in spite of all the censorship and all that. And journalists usually want to report something, and that's a job.
So, talking about the transition, the interim government has taken over. What are the key challenges you feel are there in front of them at hand, which they need to address on an immediate basis? And what role is BNP playing? I mean, say if an election is announced, say in another 2 months or 3 months, because the interim government will obviously function for a limited period. What are the plans?
You see, this is interesting. I'll respond to the last point first. When you talk about election preparation and, as you say, 2 to 3 months or whatever, the political parties with our little experience of politics, we never really need any preparation for an election. We are always prepared for the election. And in a parliamentary system, the constitution allows the government to dissolve the parliament at any time they like. So that is also another prerogative for the politicians to remain vigilant. So that is not the real issue. The real issue lies elsewhere. You see, this is a tumultuous change. And after such a change, everything gets shaken up. And that's exactly what is happening now. And we are just hoping that we can go back to normalcy as soon as possible. That is, I think, the priority one of the interim government. But to make it specific, the prime purpose and objective of this interim government is to effect a transformation from autocracy to democracy. That is their main mandate, as the students and the people of Bangladesh had endowed on them. So I think the interim government should take it as a priority to make perhaps the essential steps which would allow them to carry on a free and fair election so that the people of Bangladesh can restore the democratic system. Having said that, it's also true that there are certain reforms. As I mentioned, each and every institution had been destroyed. For instance, the election commission has been destroyed. So to go for a free and fair election, they obviously need to restore the election commission, reform the election commission, maybe formulate a few new laws. So I personally feel, when you ask me that question, I think the interim government should ponder, and they need to be very careful in deciding which are their priority jobs to do, priority reforms to do, and not necessarily spread their hands across everything. I think that will be a blunder on their part, and then things may go out of hands. Bangladesh is a volatile country, as I said, and you never know what's going to happen tomorrow.
So, a hypothetical question.
Yes.
If an election happens and BNP comes to power, what differently will it do from the previous times it was in power, and of course, from the last 15 years as Awami League has been?
This is quite obvious. You have asked two questions in one, and let me respond one by one. I'll be very frank. It's not a typical politician, as you may call, because I had been teaching, and I still consider myself to be a teacher. So maybe so that I do not always think like every other politician. First, compared to the last 15 years, BNP does not believe in a politics of retaliation or confrontation. And we do not also believe in politics of vengeance. It's not just that I have said it. You can check the track record. We had been in government between 1979 and 1982, 1991 to 96, and then, of course, 2001 to 2006. So we do not believe in retribution or taking revenge. That kind of politics does not even arise for BNP. But what we believe in is those who have committed offenses and absolutely disgusting and fatal offenses as well, killing people. You must be aware that nearly 1,000 of the opposition members had been abducted, and still today there is no trace of them. Around 10,000 political opponents had been killed on record by this government in the last 15 years. 100,000 fictitious cases had been instituted against the opposition party workers and leaders. There's not one single BNP political leader or worker who has not been accused in a fictitious case. And the total number, you couldn't believe, unbelievable, total number of accused in this 100,000 cases is more than 500,000. 500,000. We know about autocratic countries around the world. We know about the rogue states like North Korea. We already know about the Russian one-party system and all that. But can you possibly show me a second example where in a supposedly democratic country, as I said, you practice autocracy under the cover of democracy. In a country like that, there are 100,000 fictitious cases against the opposition, and there are 500,000 accused in those cases. You'll never find it. As I say, you go look at the track record. They have given fictitious cases against our party leader, against our Secretary General, and against almost each and every member of our standing committee, and so on, and down to the bottom level of our party activists. Can you show, parallelly, can you show that BNP has done that? Has BNP given a single case against Hasina? No. Has BNP given a single case against the Secretary General of
You're talking
Awami League?
about the time when you were in power.
No.
When the BNP was in power.
Sorry?
You're talking about the time when the BNP was in power.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. To answer to both of your questions. Yes,
but from what
as
we
I said,
heard,
your question has two parts.
Yes.
So you won't be able to. I mean, BNP is simply that BNP hadn't behaved in that way. So there is no reason to get worried or anything. BNP will behave. I can guarantee that if people, I'm not saying BNP would be going to power. I only say that if the people of Bangladesh vote them to be represented in the parliament and to form a government, I can guarantee that BNP will never behave in the way Awami League did.
So, which actually brings me to the next question on what are we seeing right now that is happening. A lot of the Awami League leaders are being booked in cases of murder. In fact, we spoke to different lawyers, and they told us that these are also people who had not been in Bangladesh, who are being basically booked for murder. Probably, yes, they were involved in cases of corruption and money laundering, but not murder. So these are also fake cases. So this is like, now since you're from Awami League, you will be booked.
There are two answers to your question. Whatever is being done, is BNP doing it?
No, of course not. I am not accusing BNP of anything here.
So that was your question. No, it needs to be clarified. BNP is never a part of this.
No, I'm just saying, what do you think of it?
It's not a part of this, will never be a part of this. BNP is not doing this. It is the interim government who is doing this. You must be absolutely clear. We are a political party. The people who are in the government right now, they have no experience of politics. They don't know how to handle politics. So how they are behaving and what they are doing, they will be accountable for that.
No, of course. My
This
intention was
thing.
not to.
This is one thing.
Yes.
But there is also a second thing. As I said, you do not know what they have done. As I said, the two ways. One is the political persecution, the other is the economic exploitation. For the economic exploitation, they formed an oligarchy. A handful of people who are very close to the Prime Minister, either her family members or her top party members. They captured all the economy activities in the country. And one of them, you know that her top one is called the Darvesh. I'm sure you heard about her. Him. I'm sure you heard about him. This is the economic side. The political side, I told you, Ayanagar, which has been revealed. I quoted you the figures. This is not my figures, not quoted by me. These are all in the documents of the Human Rights Watch, of Amnesty International, Journalists Without Borders. How many journalists had been killed during the past fighting periods? Can you imagine? In Bangladesh? Unbelievable. So then if you say that they cannot be charged for murder, they have not been punished.
No, of course, the
interim government has only charged many of them for murder. There will be hearings, there will be evidences put, the judges will hear the cases, and then eventually the judgment will come. So you cannot, I think it will be unfair if you compare whatever is happening right now, to compare this with what happened during the 15 years of Awami. No, I'm sorry.
So moving on to the elections now, how much is the Jamaat influence in Bangladesh? The BNP also has had an alliance with the Jamaat in 2001, and there was a government. So how much is the Jamaat influence in Bangladesh, and what are the plans? Do we see an alliance happening in the near future?
You see, I wonder if you have the facts about Jamaat and the other political parties in Bangladesh. I sometimes feel perplexed why the politicians, the policy planners, and the security strategists in India do not make an effort to know the real scene on the ground in Bangladesh. You see, Jamaat is never a force which India imagines it to be. They hardly command 5 to 8, 9% of the votes. And BNP at this point in time, yes, I'll come back to the period of 2001 to 6, but at this point of time and in the last several years, BNP has no coalition or collaboration with Jamaat because we are seceded from Jamaat. Whatever Jamaat hulabalu you hear now is what the incumbent government right now, the government of Dr. Yunus and the backup armed forces, if it is so, I don't know. So they are talking about Jamaat. It is the army chief which mentioned Jamaat in his speech. BNP didn't do it. So you must come out of a notion. You see, to draw conclusions on the basis of certain notions and perceptions may not always be correct. See, the notion of BNP, as I said, the 3 categories of India, I'm not talking about the people of India. The people, if you go to West Bengal, which is we have proximity with Bangladesh, the people of West Bengal will not get the same interpretation of Jamaat as your Delhi rulers will do. See, that's why I always say the interaction and the friendship must be between people to people. See, the problem is if the friendship is between government to government, or if the friendship is between party to party, what happens? If the parties collapse, the friendship collapses. If the government collapses, the friendship collapses. The example is right in front of us.
Yeah, in fact, that
You
was
know,
my
the
next question to
Hasina
you.
government has collapsed and the friendship between Bangladesh and India has collapsed.
Yes.
So this should by itself be an eye-opener to the policy planners, your South Bloc and your security strategies, that they were wrong and they were blatantly wrong about Bangladesh.
So before coming to India, Bangladesh, what you just mentioned, I'll take from there and ask you the next question. But before I do that, when we are still talking about Jamaat, is that the reason the 2001 alliance and the Jamaat influence and the alliance
I will
with
explain.
BNP? Is that,
Because
BNP was considered as pro-Pakistan?
My profession as a teacher, I deal with figures. I'm a theoretical physicist. So this mathematics is my subject. I'll explain it to you. But before I go on to the explanation, arithmetic explanation, it was the Awami League which in 1996 first collaborated with Jamaat in the 1996 election, well before BNP did, number one. It was Awami League which appointed in their cabinet a Razakar in 1996, a person who was the head of the so-called peace committee which was formed by Pakistan, and he was appointed a minister by Sheikh Hasina. So that's why I said the notional view or the perceptional view you have from India is totally devoid of the reality. Yes, I do admit that in 2001, BNP went into an alliance with Jamaat. But what was this alliance? This was purely an arithmetic alliance. It was not a conceptual alliance. Because, in Bangladesh, since we follow, like you in India and like in Britain, we follow the parliamentary system of democracy. It's one man, one vote. So that is a fact. It's not a proportional representation. So we must understand what it implies during the voting process. So we calculated and we found out that there are at least 50 seats out of 300 where the difference of vote between BNP and Awami League is about between 5 and 10%, which is exactly the votes that are commanded by Jamaat. So it was simple arithmetic collaboration. And we decided that if we can grab this 5 to 10% of the votes, this will alter the number of seats in the parliament, and we need to get out of 300, we need to get 151. So this was as simple as that.
Pure politics.
Exactly.
Right. So coming to the India...
And arithmetic.
And arithmetic, of course. So coming back to India-Bangladesh ties, what went wrong? How can it be repaired? Because I read a piece where you said that this needs a renewed approach. When you say a renewed approach, what do you really mean?
It's very simple. You see, I must say, let's go back, as I said, go back to history in 1971, which you may not have seen yourself with your own eyes. India had helped us in our liberation war, and I always say that without the support from India, we may not have been an independent country within the short span of 9 months. And this is a reality. So the question is, what went wrong? That the people of Bangladesh, the fact of the matter is, the people of Bangladesh had come to the realization that the friendship India extended to us in 1971 has become a friendship not between, as I said, between the people of Bangladesh and the people of India, but between two regimes, one in India and one in Bangladesh. And you see, when one talks about Bangladesh is unhappy about the Indians, let me try to explain the psychological aspects of this phenomenon. It's really the displeasure is not really against the Indians. It is the displeasure against the Hasina regime, which has destroyed democracy in this country. And when they realize when they physically see that the government in India is still backing up an autocrat who has done massive destruction in Bangladesh, as I say, economically, politically, and from the human point of view. They can't believe how on earth can India back up a government like this. And out of frustration, they have expressed their views against the Indian government, never against the Indian people. So the first thing is the Indian policymakers, as I said, the Indian politicians and the Indian security strategy, these three categories of people who formulate the policies and who execute the policies, they must come to the realization that the people of Bangladesh, in fact, those who know Bangladeshi people, you have been here for almost 10 days and you'll be here for another week. I'm not stating this, but you just find out for yourself and search your heart and ask for yourself. Bangladeshis are one of the friendliest people in the whole world. You go anywhere, they will extend some kind, need any assistance, they will go out of their way to help you. They will not distinguish whether you come from India or England or the US or Bangladesh. They will not differentiate. So it's sad, I would put it this way, it's sad that this friendship has been destroyed between the people of India and the people of Bangladesh. So this psyche and this analysis must be done by the Indians. Who run the Indian government, as a matter of fact, and who decide on this. And they have to come to the realization that it is also in the interest of India to seek friendship with the people, but not with a party or a government.
Right. So that is the renewed approach you're talking about.
That is the renewed approach. They have to have a change of heart, if I may say so.
Right. So, talking about BNP's political ambitions in Bangladesh now, we were also reading reports that the chief's son is going to come back to Bangladesh and, he'll be contesting. What do you have to say about that?
Khaleda's son is now our acting chairperson and this also happened as a consequence of Hasina's decision, because she decided to put Begum Khaleda Zias in jail in a fictitious case. Now that those cases had been annulled and she is a free person now. But you realize the mistake she committed. Perhaps she thought that if she can destroy Begum Khaleda Zias, she can destroy BNP. But it backfired. So when she tried to destroy Begum Khaleda Zias' party, she got rejuvenated. And the matter of fact was his son who was the senior vice president at that point in time. So he became the acting chairperson of the party. And since the last almost a decade, not exactly, he had been conducting the responsibilities of the chairman of the party. Right. And he is now the leader of the party. Although he is located 5,000 miles away. But again, coming back to the modern technology, so distance is no longer a factor nowadays. Your physical location is not as important as it used to be 50 years ago, 25 years ago. So he is conducting day-to-day work of the party from there. So he is the acting chairman. And it is up to the people of Bangladesh to decide who is going to be the Prime Minister of Bangladesh or who is going to be in the parliament in majority or minority. I individually, if you ask me this question and if I try to answer or justify the role of our acting chairperson, it will not be fair. The people will decide. If the people vote for him, then he will take up the leadership in the government. He is already the leader of the opposition party. Right. I think if we really believe in democracy, we must accept the basic notion of democracy. It's the people who will decide eventually. And whatever reservations an individual may have about another individual, Yes, in personal life, these are important factors. But in a national life where we believe in the concept of democracy, the people will decide. If people vote for him, he will be the prime minister. If people do not vote for him, he will not be the prime minister. The position is absolutely clear.
But how do you see the political landscape changing in Bangladesh? Of course, BNP remains the largest party, but what about others? There are smaller parties as well. Some new faces probably will come up.
Yes. Here lies something which may not be too obvious from the Indian geographical context. But when you think about the United Kingdom, when you think about the United States, you see that there are two major political parties.
Right.
Bangladesh is the same. It's basically the two major political parties, the Awami League and the BNP. So that's how the politics revolves around these two political. There are smaller parties. There will always be smaller parties because every individual must have the freedom of association, which means he can set up a party. This is his birthright in a way. This is his constitutional right. So there will be smaller parties, and if you believe in the parliamentary democratic system, he will have to throw him in front of the people and seek his vote. If he is voted, he will become a member of the parliament. Even then he goes into the member of the parliament, his party will have to have majority to command the government. No. Otherwise not. So this is basic fundamental principle which is absolutely clear to everyone. So the small parties have their roles. And you know that small parties sometimes, they come into alliance with bigger parties to take a share of the authority and power.
So last question. We have also read in reports that the two big parties, like you yourself said, Awami League and BNP, have been altering history according to what they believe is correct. When we talk about the 1971 Liberation War and, the role of, say, members of the Awami League or freedom fighters, that has been altered each time a government comes. There's a new, interpretation of it. How do you see that?
What is the question again? When you say alter, what do you mean?
Their own interpretation of who played a part in the liberation in 1971, whether it was Mujib who played a bigger part.
Okay. Yeah. I understand. I think eventually history will determine the answer to your question. But as we see it, you see, Awami League was the predominant party prior to the Liberation War. But when the Pakistani army, they clamped down on the innocent people of Bangladesh on the night of the 25th of March, and they started killing people indiscriminately on the streets of Dhaka, Awami League did not show the courage to face it and oppose it and fight against the Pakistan. That is a fact of history. They escaped. They fled, just like what Sheikh Hasina did on the 5th of August. Do you know, are you aware that many of the Awami Leaguers have strong resentment against Hasina, why she fled and left his co-workers behind? So this is the very similar role played by Awami League in 1971. This is vital because this exposes the character of a political party. The person who founded the BNP, Ziaur Rahman, what did he do? He was a simple major at that point in time. On the very night when this was going on, he revolted against the Pakistan. He grabbed the radio Pakistan transmitter, went there and announced that I do hereby declare the independence of Bangladesh. That's what he said. These are his words on record in the world history. BBC was the one which first spread it around the world. So, you see, when you ask about the difference between the two parties, the role of the two parties, I have been very frank. So it is the people. Then what happens? After the people see the different roles of the two different political parties, and that role of Awami League has been reconfirmed in 2024. Those people are now more convinced about what they did or what they could have done then. You see, it makes a difference. You see, you can read history. You know, there are people who escape from the enemy in the war. People who face them, and if they are not strong enough, or if they do not have enough strength, they fight and die. Some of them fight a hero's death. How many couldn't do that? They failed to do that. And that is exactly why this question has been asked by you. If they had played their designated role on the night of the 25th of March, 1971, you would not have had the chance to ask me this question.
Thank you so much, sir. Thanks a lot. That was a really enlightening discussion.
Thank you.
So this was Mr. Abdul Moyeen speaking with us about the political landscape that may change in the coming months, what is in store for the BNP, and how it will pan out on the ground. This is Ananya Bharadwaj reporting from Dhaka for ThePrint.